Lead me to some soul today. Oh, teach me, Lord, just what
Welcome,
to
everyone,
say.
to episode number 52. I can't hardly believe it. This is our 52nd interview that we've done. But the 52nd interview of a series of episodes that we're calling Leading Others to Christ. Those of you that have been listening and watching, you know that during these episodes, we're going to be focused on evangelism. And we have a lot of goals, but one of them is to stir us up. Stir us up, as the Hebrew writer said, to love and good works, but especially in the area of reaching our family, our friends, and our neighbors with the gospel of Christ. My name is Dan Barker, and I preach for the Creekside Church of Christ in Franklin, Indiana. As I've said every time, Franklin's about 20 miles south of downtown Indianapolis. Those of you that know me know that I'm passionate about our subject. I'm passionate about evangelism, and I have been ever since I obeyed the gospel when I was 21 years old in Owensboro, Kentucky. And ever since then, I've always strived to, I'm going to use some Bible phrases. I've always strived to teach others, to sow the seed, to be a fisher of men and women, of course, to make disciples, to persuade men and women. And I see myself more as a teacher than I do a preacher, but to teach others to teach. And always remembering what Paul told Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2. And the things you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And then later in that chapter, he says, Paul says to Timothy to be useful for the master, prepared for every good work. So those of you that have heard the story back when the COVID stuff hit last year in 2020, came up with this idea of doing interviews to find the Christians, to identify the Christians, men and women, who are fellow workers, who are doing this. They are reaching and leading others to Christ. And once we've identified them, to interview them, and we want to learn more about them, who they are, where they are working, why they're doing what they're doing. And so that's a little backdrop that we do every time. We might change that in the future as we go, but we're so excited today to have an old friend of mine with us, Danny McKibben. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody to get out your pen and paper, not if you're driving, but get out your pen and paper and take notes here, because Danny has a lot of things that he's done in his past, and there's a lot of things that we'll learn from him. And just really, really do appreciate you being here, Danny. Danny and his wife, Kathy, work with the Lakeside Church of Christ in Somerset, Kentucky. And why don't we do this, as we've always done? I call it the elevator pitch or the short bio. Danny, bring us up to speed a little bit of the ones out there that don't know Danny. For example, where you were born, how old you were when you obeyed the gospel, and that, if you would.
Oh, okay. Well, I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. Anyway, growing up, I didn't attend church anywhere. I went once with a friend to the Baptist church in the sixth grade, and that's an interesting story in and of itself. And then once in high school, I went to a Christmas play at the Christian church. But other than that, I didn't attend. Used to watch Billy Graham some. My mom was watching him on television. I really didn't know much about the Bible, and just really kind of grew up I suppose, a heathen, a pagan. But I always kind of believed the Bible to be true. And so I graduated high school in 1976 there in Louisville from Beard High School. And then kind of got interested because of circumstance, kind of got interested in seeking after God. It was kind of, by divine providence. I was working at a roofing company, and I got laid off. I was living with my brother. My parents retired and went to northern Kentucky. And anyway, so here I am stuck in the house without a job, bills piling up, and for whatever it was worth, it was like I'm not getting much out of life. This is kind of hard, and so I just prayed to God that please show me a better way. There's got to be more than what I was getting, and then by providence, just different things happened. Began lifting weights with a buddy from school, and Anyway, he was dating a member of the church, and that's how we kind of got connected with the Expressway congregation. He was dating a girl, and then they kind of fixed me up, and then I was converted in the summer of '77. And so anyway, began learning the Bible and just trying to soak it all in. It was all new, and I had to learn a lot of things. And then as the more I began to learn, because I didn't know, I knew there were all these different churches, but I didn't know much about it. But then I saw all this error, and then that, in time, it kind of compelled me to, hey, maybe I need to try to maybe become a preacher and teach the gospel. And so it was just the compulsion of truth and seeing all the error and a love for others that sort of kind of guided me in that direction. So then I set my mind, and then there were a lot of people and influences that helped me along the way. And then I met my wife, and we got married in 1979. Actually started preaching February of 1979 regularly, and then at Oak Grove outside of Louisville, and then my wife and I, we got married. We moved to Horse Cave, Kentucky, lived there for 2 years. And then we moved to Campbellsville, and we lived 7 years there. And then we moved to Rockcastle County, a rural area, to the Providence congregation. We worked with the congregation there for 29 years. And then 4 years ago, we started attending here at the Lakeside congregation and sort of shifted into responsibilities. Our son actually has been the local preacher. He's actually leaving to go to Nashville starting the first of the month of August. And so I kind of just help out in different ways. And I really focus on, teaching overseas. I got involved in foreign evangelism many years ago. First place I went was in Jamaica. I think it was in 1994. Then 1998, I started going to the Philippines by the invitation of Jerry Parks. And then in 2002, got invited to go to Ecuador, and got involved in Ecuador, then Colombia, and then Chile came up, and then went into Argentina once, been in Peru, been in Panama, been in Nicaragua and Guatemala and Mexico. And anyway, so I took an interest in foreign evangelism many years ago. I always thought it was interesting, and so, but that's kind of a focus. And then kind of preaching, fill in some of the small congregations around about, and then involved here. But that's kind of my life told as a tale, as the psalmist says, Psalm 90. But anyway, it just had no idea when I was converted. I would, I'd have the opportunity to travel to a lot of places throughout our country and meet a lot of brethren in other countries, and there's a lot of blessings in meeting other people in other places, to experience their cultures and to behold people that serve God and love God in other countries and other places, and that's just it's just been a blessing. There are challenges to it, and and I guess the Lord had a niche for me, because growing up we would go to the country, and we had a little farmhouse when I was 5. My mom and dad bought this farm, and we would go there a lot on weekends, and without running water and cistern, and without indoor plumbing, we had an outhouse. And really, I guess I managed with all those types of things, living without air conditioning. And I guess it's a good training in going overseas and working in some of the foreign countries. So anyway.
Wow. Thank you. That was good. I told you I tried to jump in. There's too many places I can jump in there, but that's fascinating. But I just I love doing this from the standpoint of hearing everybody's story, and everybody,
Mm-hmm.
You have a story, I have a story, everybody does, right? And I think it's fascinating how God chose to have the Bible written. It's stories. I mean, we read about all the characters and their lives and their experiences and things that we're supposed to learn from the good, bad, and ugly that they did. But just think about, and you mentioned providence. I don't understand completely the providence of God. I don't know if anyone does, but it's fascinating. And I just And I wrote down there real quick, and I think I understood you say you were lifting weights with a buddy, and he was dating a girl that was a member of the church, and that's where that connection started, right?
That's where it all started. And for me, seeking God was in the winter of '77. It was we had all that snow. I got laid off and hadn't worked long enough to draw unemployment, so here are all these bills piling up, and moved into an apartment away from where I grew up, a few miles, and so buddies at school, I was kind of detached away, and that cost money to come over, and but anyway, it was kind of it was kind of in a dire predicament that really began to reflect about life, and I guess it's in hardship that people kind of look to God. I guess when everything's going good and well, people think, well, why do I need God? And kind of remind what Ted Turner said many years ago, Christianity's for losers. I mean, here's a guy who's a multimillionaire and everything's going great for him. He thinks, well, why do I need God? And too often that's the way it is for the majority of the world. But when you don't have much and you're hurting and you're lacking, it's like, well, there's got to be more to life than what I was getting. And that was the thing that caused me to think about, I need to seek after God. And, I guess I was kind of like a Cornelius. I just cried out, Lord, show me. And I had no idea where to begin in seeking, to find the truth, but by divine providence through my buddy Mike Garrett. And he was a Baptist, and he was actually converted, and he remained at Expressway, one of the elders there now. He was a deacon and one of the elders, and just a great guy. Wow. But anyway, yeah.
Can you imagine when you were however old you were there at that time?
And I was 19. Yeah, I was
19. If you'd been able to fast forward and see in the future, one of these days I'm going to go to Philippines and Ecuador and Chile. I mean, it would have, there's no way you could have even envisioned that, right?
No. I would have never envisioned traveling to all the places I've been and the things that I've done. Even after I was converted, I mean, that was furthest thing from my mind. I was just working a job, working with Mosaic, and I was a Christian and I was learning, and I was excited about that, to learn all these new things that I'd never experienced when I was a kid. And I always kind of felt people ought to go to church and, those types of things. And I just never did really get around to it till, after high school, and, began seeking after and reading the Bible for the first time. I don't know how many times I'd flip through pages and that don't make sense. And then to come across something that was exciting, to learn something. Wow, this is great. I understand this. And so you just kind of, you stay with it, and it's kind of like learning Spanish. I remember Wayne Pertain, I was talking to him. He said, if you stay with it, it'll finally sink in. And, traveling to, in the Spanish speaking countries, I thought, I'd never teach in Spanish. I mean, that would be impossible. And yet here I am, I teach in Spanish. I don't know everything about Spanish, but I know enough the lessons I teach to instruct, and it's a lot more fun to talk directly instead of through an interpreter. So anyway.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, that's so wow. Just so many things here, Danny. But one thought is that the blessings of being older and experiencing, because you're not as old as I am, but think about it, all the experiences that you've had, all like you went back to the farm and an outhouse and no running water, no air conditioner, and being laid off and not having work and the bills piling up and experiencing those things. But when you talk to people today, as you meet people and looking for opportunity to develop relationships so you can teach them the truth, and you hear a little bit of their story, you can relate to them, right? You can go, okay, I've been in that. And it gives you, because of that background, it gives you an opportunity to understand them so that you can communicate with them, right?
Well, yeah. Various background, various events in your life, it does well to be able to relate to people. Sometimes they think, you don't understand, And that's the problem. A lot of times we don't know the background of people. And you look at Abraham Lincoln and people are, oh, yeah, he was a great president. But you look at the background and all that he went through. Those are the things that mold and shape people as you go through life. And, and because not everything was a bed of roses for Abraham Lincoln. And there's other people that I've met. We had a next door neighbor when we moved to Rock Castle, Ola Phelps, and she had gone through a lot, but it was because of her dedication to God and, seeking after God. She was such a well-rounded person and so wise in so many ways because she had learned from life's experiences and, being dedicated to the Lord. And and that's the thing. The Lord, it'd be a lot simpler for the Lord just tell us and we get it and okay, but it's kind of like kids. Sometimes we have to learn it the hard way. And that's the way it is as we, follow God, that we learn things the hard way. And so we take those experiences and let the trials and tribulations mold and shape us, as James talks about there in James chapter 1. And to use those things to the glory of God and to our development and to be able to relate and try to help other people. Just always try to look for those opportunities and to do things and to find little niches that you can do. And that was kind of one of the things about coming here to the lakeside and I'm not the regular preacher is that, I thought, well, just the way things worked out is to try to spend more time. And of course, last year it didn't go anywhere with the pandemic, but like the year before, a couple of years before that, I'd travel 5 or 6 different countries and, be gone a couple of weeks. And so anyway, but not everybody does it. I know there are a lot of people that just have no interest in going overseas. Maybe they're not capable. Maybe they're not, because it's not always a bed of roses going to a foreign country and the sanitary conditions, the living conditions, and et cetera. But, I guess, like I said, because my background of growing up and going to the country, going to an outhouse and, those types of things, it's okay. Yeah, I can handle it, but some people can't. So anyway,
Right.
I just figured, man.
Well, it's you mentioned Jamaica earlier. I had a chance to go down to Jamaica on 2 different occasions several years ago, and then also had a chance to go to Sierra Leone in Africa. And I remember particularly Sierra Leone when we were having some meetings before we went over there, and discussion came up of this fellow was trying to equip us to be ready for the smells. And I was sitting there listening to it, and I thought, well, I've smelled a lot of bad things, but just to try to, the majority of the people, like you said, had no water, most didn't even have electricity. Any cooking that was done, it would be like what we would call a little barbecue grill out in the front yard or the backyard, and that's where they would cook. And until I got over there, did I fully appreciate the smells, what they were trying to tell me. And yeah, it's just little things like that you experience that most don't have that chance to. And somebody was talking the other day about, complaining about the bench at church being so hard. And, it made me think about the different ones. And you've got stories on this too, of people that would come in these other countries, come to a facility that people here, most of us wouldn't even imagine, and sit on the ground and not complain, and be there and singing with all kinds of enthusiasm and anxious to hear what was being taught. I don't know. We're spoiled in a lot of ways, aren't we?
Well, yeah. As people just would have a chance to go to a third world country, and I look at living here in America. I mean, we're just well blessed, and a lot to be thankful for and appreciate. And but the great thing is how the Bible functions everywhere. And to me, that's the most amazing thing. I mean, yeah, you speak different languages, and sometimes you have some different customs, but fundamentally, people are the same everywhere. And you study the scriptures, and you read the passages, and you interchange with people, and and sharing the Word of God. And, it's really great when people like shaking their head. Yeah, they understand. And yeah, you hear the pages of the Bible and they're following along where you ask a question. And it's like, wow, you can see their eyes light up of coming to an understanding of some particular point. Yeah, it's always great to see people. It's really encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that of just to realize how powerful the Bible is. Of course, we talk about it, we preach about it, people hear, even nod their head. But like you say, when you can take that word and go to other places and people will nod that they get it, they understand it. And that's so exciting. We when we were talking the other day, and I thought I wanted you to elaborate on it a little bit. And I don't know if I understood the whole content of the story, but you had mentioned, I think you were a kid or younger, and I think you went to a meeting, or maybe somebody told you this story where Grover Stevens was preaching.
Oh,
Was that?
yeah. Well, yeah, that was back at the Taylor Boulevard congregation, and Buddy was up there sitting on the front row, and Grover said, "You need to go back a row or two, because there's gonna always." I mean, that was a time in the late '50s, early '60s, like that. I mean, brethren, they were sharing the message, and there would be different ones that come up almost every service. And so it's like, hey, move back, because, hey, there's going to be people come up and respond to the invitation. And I just thought that was kind of interesting of how things used to be. And, there's some places. I remember one time we were in the mountains of Tanig in the northern part of the Philippines, and it was kind of a neat place that we went to. We rented a truck to take us up there, and there was no electricity, and very rural, and you had to pound out the rice out of the hull by hand. I got to do that. That was a neat experience, and they had a log, a little short piece of log, and they had kind of cupped it out, and they put the rice in there, and you take a kind of and you beat that out. But that was a neat experience, and we had taught, and there were like, I think there were 12 people, maybe it was 15 people, and they were all lined up in the creek to be baptized. I mean, that was just a kind of a neat experience.
No, that's incredible. I was telling Gay about what you said there about Grover Stevens in that meeting. Can you imagine today, where if somebody came, it's almost like in some places nobody sits on the front pew, but if you said that today, that if you would please find another seat, because there'll be several people that'll be responding today to the invitation. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, just to think about that, of how things have changed. And I think some of it is one of the reasons why we wanted to do these podcasts, is that Danny, that if you go back to the 50s and the 60s, and of course most that are listening to this know of the the problems and the division and all the internal fighting and stuff that started taking place, but the Christians were on fire more back then, and like that experience there with Grover Stevens. And what can we do to get motivated again and to stir people up, because there's so many people that need to hear the gospel, and so many people don't realize, I'm afraid, what their individual, it's more than just the preacher's role or the elder's role. It's everybody, all of us are supposed to be doing this, and to try to get people involved that way again. If there is a gospel meeting where everybody's inviting people to come, and I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, but there are changes, and I've seen it in my lifetime, but I think Lord willing, we can get people stirred up again. Tell me, we've done this every time, and Matt, can you believe it? He just gave me, we've got 5 minutes to go. Can you believe that, Danny? I know it. We've been calling this a conversion story, and I know you've got so many, but is there one that maybe came to mind that you'd like to share with everybody, of a conversion story you'd like to tell?
Well, I don't know. One of the first years I was at Providence, which would have been 30-something years ago, one of the ladies from church, she was the elder's wife, and she said, why don't you go visit Frank and Irene Brown? And so I was going over there, and And I got talking to him and asked him about having Bible study. Irene had been a member of the church, had kind of fallen away. And Frank, he'd never obeyed. His parents were when he was a kid, and then he got off in one thing or another. He drunk a lot and what have you. But kind of got going over there and studying with Frank and Irene, and that was fun. Went several times and several weeks, and I don't know, Kathy, she thought, boy, you're like wasting your time. You know, you just they were still interested, and Irene, she was kind of waiting on Frank, and Frank, he was in his 50s when he obeyed the gospel, but he was kind of hesitant because he knew he needed to turn from the drinking but anyway, and he was afraid that if he did something and just fall back into it, he didn't want to do that. And so anyway, I was over there, and one of his buddies, his drinking buddies, was there. And they were sitting out in the car, and they invited me. And this guy, he was one of these fellows that knew a lot of stuff, but just a little bit of all kinds of topics.
Right.
And I was sitting there, and he was asking all these questions, and he had superficial answers and, you know, shallow thinking. And so, okay, we were just kind of looking at them one after another, you know, and just looked at them and answered them. And Frank sitting in the back, but what's interesting about that is that he saw the fellow was just pretty foolish and superficial. And, you know, I was answering just calmly and all his objections and his points that he was bringing up. And Frank, he's back there listening, and he's thinking, you know, I don't need to be a part of that anymore. It's just that he just saw the utter nonsense of somebody just worldly and what have you. And anyway, he obeyed the gospel soon after that, a few days. And but he was a stellar fellow. And Frank and Irene, they were faithful, and they both passed away. But that was an interesting case, and just showing kindness. And you know, you have people that they think they know, and they just, you know, they're kind of antagonistic against the truth, against the Lord, against what's right. Just be calm. If you have the truth, you can have great confidence, and just, you know, kindly deal with people, and don't have to, you know, treat in kind in return. It's just, okay, well, let's look at that, and you know, and that's where you present the gospel. The gospel, that's where the power is, and we can rest and have great confidence in it, and your position of what's true and right, and just share the message, and you know, don't have to get into some big argument to say, hey, this is what the Bible says. Hey, how do you answer this? And yeah.
No, that's again, that's so good. And it's interesting how I'm listening to the stories anymore, but I went back to and I didn't write it down fast enough, but the one lady that suggested to you to go see, why don't you go see Frank and Irene? What was her name again? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, Ivis Thomas. Yeah. Miss Ivis. You know, and that's the thing. A lot of people, you know, can sort of suggest maybe if you don't feel like you're capable, it's like, hey, but I know somebody that could teach the class.
Exactly.
And you know, there's always people out there. Yeah.
Or just where somebody realized. So I don't know if she fully appreciated the role that she played in that, and saying to you, well, why don't you go talk to them? And then, you know, what ends up happening, and everybody can do that. I mean, that's such a simple thing to point the ones that are willing, that are able and willing to teach, is to point family and friends to those folks. And of course, God's going to give the increase. But that's so good. We've got to wrap this up, but we've been ending all the interviews, Danny, with, I've been calling it one thing, and there's more than one thing. But let's say somebody that's listening to this and they're motivated by your story and what you've had to say and all the work that you've done, and they say, I want to get involved in leading others to Christ. What's one thing, Danny McKibben, what's one thing that I need to do, or one thing I need to learn how to do to reach others for Christ?
Well, first and foremost, just be dedicated to the Lord, be sincere and genuine, and, you know, just have love for God. And when you have love for God, you're going to have love for your fellow man. I mean, that's what compelled me to begin with, to get involved in preaching, is that when you understand the scriptures, when you understand truth and love for God, and people are in error, and people are out there lost and undone. And by God's grace, I was saved, and by divine providence, I came to the knowledge of truth. And so that's, just make me an instrument. Use me, Lord. And we just trust in the Lord to look for those doors of opportunity of speaking and just sharing and being involved with people. And it's like I heard, the magical words, hey, would you like to study the Bible? And, it's not all that complex. And our job is just to be sowing the seed and just talking. And, there's going to be a lot of people, no, I'm not interested. No, I don't have time. No, I don't. Okay, well, you move on. And maybe later on, you'll have an opportunity to talk to them. But just be dedicated to the Lord. And I remember Robert Jackson telling the story. This fella, he called and he says, this Reverend Jackson said, oh, you got him. And then they were going along. He just thought somebody was pulling his leg. And then he said, oh, well, let me apologize. I misunderstood who you were. And anyway, so what had happened, Robert had spoke at this fellow's grandmother's funeral. And, just try to be what you need to be and be kind and be a servant. And so when he started seeking, that's the only fellow he could think about was Robert Jackson preaching at his grandmother's funeral. Wow. And so he contacted Robert, and ultimately, he studied and talked, and ultimately the fellow was converted. But just be dedicated to the Lord, and people see you. You don't know that you're having influence, but everybody has influence. And because I remember we would travel out to the country when I was a kid, and we'd pass by church services being let out, and I would kind of like scrunch down in the car because I thought everybody was looking at me saying, hey, why aren't you in church? And it's like, I was so ashamed, but just being an example, sometimes you can have a tremendous influence, and, people be watching you, and it's like, oh, Dan, I worked with him, and he's the fellow I would go if I was seeking spiritual things, because, I knew the kind of person he was, that he was a nice person, and he talked about God, and we can be an influence, and you never know that the Lord will open a door of opportunity and use us. And just like Miss Ivis saying, hey, why don't you go see Frank and Irene? Everybody can do that, and we're all part. Whether you're the one doing the teaching, or you're the one suggesting the name, we can all have a part.
All right. Well, just outstanding. We need to follow up on this. There's too many things here I've written down here that we don't have time to talk about. But I just I thank God for how about this? I thank God for using Danny as an instrument. And
well, thank you.
Keep up. You and Kathy be sure to tell her we said hi. And but you guys keep up your good work, and so proud of all the things that you've done, and keep encouraging you to do those things, and be sure and share this with your friends too that are listening, because they need to, some of those things, your friends haven't heard some of these stories, so be sure and share this with them. But Danny, again, thank you so very much, and we love you guys, and keep up your good work.
Oh, thank you. We love you too. Appreciate having me to come and share with you guys.
All right. Thank you again. Goodbye.
There are who pray, melt my heart and fill my life. Give me one soul today.